Kunja Vihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Giridharadhari Gopi Jana Vallabha Giridharadhari Yasodanandana Brajacanaranjana Yasodanandana Brajacanaranjana Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Giridharadhari Gopi Jana Vallabha Giridharadhari Yasodanandana Brajacanaranjana Yasodanandana Brajacanaranjana Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jamuna Tira Vanachari Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Srila Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Srila Prabhupada Jayam Vishnu Paramahansa Parvakacharya Sacha Shri Shriman His Divine Loving Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Goswami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jayam Vishnu Paramahansa Parvakacharya Sacha Shri Shriman His Divine Loving Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Ananta Koi Vaishnavinda Ki Jai Namachari Haridas Thakur Ki Jai Ramasakahor Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Shri Gadadhar Shri Vasudeva Gaur Bhaktavinda Ki Jai Shri Radha Krishna Gopinath Samakunda Radha Kunda Giri Govardhan Ki Vrindavan Dham Ki, Mayapur Dham Ki, Navadvip Dham Ki, Shrimati Tulsi Devi Ki, Shrimati Bhakti Devi Ki, Samaveta Bhaktivinoda ki jai. All glories to assembled devotees. All glories to assembled devotees. All glories to assembled devotees. All glories to Shishi, Guru and Garanga. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Jai Namo Om Vishwapadaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Shrimati Bhakti Vedanta Swamini Namane Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pachani Nirvishesha Sanyavari Pasatya Satani Om Agana Chamarandasya Jana Jana Salakaya Jaksun Militanyena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhistam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Gadanmayam Tadanti Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Varakamalam Shri Guru Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatham Vitam Tam Sajevam Sadvaitam Sadvadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishaka Vitam Cha Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagapati Gopisa Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostate O Mahavananaya Krishna Prema Padayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namani Gaur Tushe Namaha Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vindamanishwari Vishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hare Priye Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Bhyevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaur Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Good evening, Hare Krishna. Thank you for inviting me this evening, and I pray that Srila Prabhupada inspires me to say something that inspires your Krishna consciousness. This evening, we're discussing the 4th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, entitled Transcendental Knowledge, and we're going to cover 2 verses. We're going to cover 17 and 18. Karmaṇo hi api boddhavyaṁ cha vikarmaṇaḥ akarmaṇaścha boddhavyaṁ gahanā karmaṇo gatiḥ karmaṇo hi api boddhavyaṁ cha vikarmaṇaḥ akarmaṇaścha boddhavyaṁ gahanā karmaṇo gatiḥ karmaṇo hi api boddhavyaṁ cha vikarmaṇaḥ akarmaṇaścha boddhavyaṁ gahanā karmaṇo gatiḥ. And then we'll do word for word. Karmaṇaḥ, of work, he, certainly, api, also, boddhavyaṁ, should be understood. Boddhavyaṁ should be understood. Cha, also, vikarmaṇaḥ, of forbidden work. Akarmaṇaḥ, of inaction. Cha, also, boddhavyaṁ, should be understood. Gahanā, very difficult. Karmaṇaḥ, of work. Gatiḥ, entrance. And the translation: the intricacies of action are very hard to understand. Therefore, one should know properly what action is, what forbidden action is, and what inaction is. A purport by His Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada. If one is serious about liberation from material bondage, one has to understand the distinctions between action, inaction, and unauthorized actions. One has to apply oneself to such an analysis of action, reaction, and perverted actions because it is very difficult subject matter. To understand Krishna consciousness and action according to its modes, one has to learn one's relationship with the Supreme. That is, one who has learned perfectly knows that every living entity is an eternal servitor of the Lord, and that consequently one has to act in Krishna consciousness. The entire Bhagavad Gita is directed toward this conclusion. Any other conclusions against this consciousness and its attendant actions are vikarmas, or prohibited actions. To understand all this, one has to associate with authorities in Krishna consciousness and learn the secret from them. This is as good as learning from the Lord directly. Otherwise, even the most intelligent persons will be bewildered. And text 18, karmaṇi akarmaya paśyed, akarmaṇi akarma buddhimān manuṣyeṣu yuktaḥ kṛtsna-karma-kṛt, karmaṇi paśyed, akarmaṇi buddhimān manuṣyeṣu yuktaḥ kṛtsna-karma-kṛt, akarmaṇi paśyed, akarmaṇi buddhimān manuṣyeṣu yuktaḥ kṛtsna-karma-kṛt. And the word for word, karmaṇi, inaction, akarma, inaction, one who, paśyed, observes, akarmaṇi, inaction, also, karma, fruit of action, one who, he, buddhimān, is intelligent, manuṣyeṣu, in human society, he, yuktaḥ, is in the transcendental position, kṛtsna-karma-kṛt, although engaged in all activities. Translation. One who sees action in inaction and action in inaction is intelligent among men, and he is in the transcendental position, although engaged in all sorts of activities. Srila Prabhupada's purport. A person acting in Krishna consciousness is naturally free from the bonds of karma. His activities are all performed for Krishna. Therefore, he does not enjoy or suffer any of the effects of work. Consequently, he is intelligent in human society, even though he is engaged in all sorts of activities for Krishna. Akarma means without reaction to work. The impersonalist ceases fruitive activities out of a fear, so that the resultant actions may not be a stumbling block on the path of self-realization. But the personalist knows rightly his position as the eternal servitor of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Therefore, he engages himself in the activities of Krishna consciousness because everything is done for Krishna. He enjoys only transcendental happiness in the discharge of this service. Those who are engaged in the process are known to be without desire for personal sense gratification. The sense of eternal servitorship to Krishna makes one immune to all sorts of reactionary elements of work. Jai Srila Prabhupada. So, in the Bhagavad Gita, it talks about 5 different subject matters. It talks about the Ishvara, Krishna, explains Krishna. It talks about the jiva, us. It talks about prakriti, material nature, and it talks about karma and time. So this evening, we're going to have a nice discussion about karma. and hopefully come to a deeper understanding about how it affects us. Srila Prabhupada, he had recommended that we not study karma in detail because karma, he said, was a very complicated subject matter. However, Krishna addresses it here in the Bhagavad Gita because we need to have some understanding, some comprehension about how it works so we can apply it deeply in our own lives. A few verses back, Krishna had stated that men in this world desire success and fruitive activities, and therefore they worship the demigods. Quickly, of course, men get results from fruitive work in this world. He then goes on to say that he's created these modes of material nature. And excuse me, I'm going to turn down this fan. Sorry. He's created these modes of material nature, and that men, everyone has to work, and they're working through these modes. The work is done in relation to these modes, according to what modes a person holds and in what percentage they hold them. That their work is going to be done. And he explains that is where the varnas are in society. You have the brahmanas, the kshatriyas, the vaishyas, and the sudras. It's a natural situation all over the world. You have this situation, no matter what the philosophy of a country is, or their government philosophy is. No matter what, you still have classes of brahmanas, classes of kshatriyas, and classes of vaishyas and sudras because of these modes. Also, these modes are evident through all the different types of bodies that you see, all the different types of human bodies we see. Even if we're able to see each other and compare, we would all have different bodies, and this is all an effect of the modes of material nature. And then that also goes into the animal society. So then Krishna goes on to explain that he's created all this, but none of this work affects him. Nor do I aspire for the fruits of action. One who understands this truth about me also does not become entangled in fruitive reactions of work. So Krishna is giving us insight into karma and how it works and how we can actually become free from karma. He says that this is not an easy subject matter in the last verse. He says, even the intelligent are bewildered in determining what is action and what is inaction. And so here we're going to come to some understanding. So as a person has different natures according to the modes of material nature, they can take on a certain body. And Srila Prabhupada explains this like buying a shirt. You go to the store and you want to buy a very beautiful, expensive shirt. If you don't have the money, you're not buying it. So our karma is like the money, and the shirt is like our next body. So whatever body we get, it's due to our work, our past work. And that's a set law that can't be changed. So one has to work according to their qualities. We cannot, we can see these different qualities, and we've studied these different qualities in the Bhagavad Gita as well, because as devotees, as bhaktas, we prefer to associate with the mode of goodness because it's from pure goodness that we can reach the transcendental platform. We can't reach that transcendental platform through passion or ignorance. So we have to come to pure goodness. And so if somebody is working in pure goodness, they can reach that transcendental platform. Now, the word karma is also refers to good activities. And the Vedas, this large percent of the Vedas is dedicated to teaching people how to live a good karmic life so that they can be happy in this material world and possibly even elevate themselves up to a heavenly planet. And so if a person follows these rules of karma kanda and regulations, they can go to a heavenly planet. But of course, if they're acting in the mode of passion, they'll most likely stay in the middle planetary system, is where we are now. And if they're acting in tamagun, if they're acting in ignorance, then they will be degraded down into the a lower body, an animal body even, or a hellish planet, lower planetary system. So the behavior is what determines our next position. So, and we have to accept the body accordingly. Now, vikarma is forbidden activity. This is sinful activity. This is illicit sex. This is meat eating. This is gambling. This is intoxication. These are the things that will lead to definitely a very hellish existence. So they're prohibited in the Vedas, and they're definitely prohibited in our society and our vows to our spiritual master. Of course, if the sense gratificatory process of good karma is basically a system of getting the senses and getting them together with their sense objects. And the problem with this is that when this comes together, there's more identity with the body and there's more entanglement for the living entity, and that the desires increase. There's no cessation from this system. So even if somebody is fortunate enough to get to a higher planetary system, and we've read the descriptions in the Bhagavatam, they sound quite wonderful, right? There are beautiful people. There are these society women who are beautiful beyond compare. They have apsaras who are dancing. They have gandharvas that are singing beautiful music. They have palaces with gems and gold and beautiful gardens. And they even have somaras. There's even an intoxication for the heavenly planets. But the thing about it is that even after some time, there's still death. There's still death. And the soul has to come back down. And Srila Prabhupada explains there's also the threefold miseries of Adi-atmic, Adi-bodhic, and Adi-daivik. And we've read about that in the Bhagavatam too, is how the demons would chase the demigods out of the heavenly planets, even take over their palaces. Hiranyakasipu lived in the palace of Lord Indra for some time, quite some time, before he was driven out. So even in the attainment of the heavenly planets, there is misery. And that's what makes this material pleasure so imperfect in so many ways. And we see that even in this planet. We see that as someone may be born in a wealthy family, and they may be very beautiful and may even have a good education. But with just a slight accident or a twist of fate, they can lose it all. And it's interesting because this is primarily the mentality of the whole planet. Like Krishna spoke earlier, he said this is men's desire is to attain material things and to be materially happy. And it's interesting when you look at this cycle that they work so hard as young people to get a degree, to get a diploma or for some achievement in order to get a job, where they're in fear. Am I going to get this job? Am I going to get the right job? And even if they get the job, they're in fear. Is my boss going to like me? What if I make a mistake? What if I lose my job? And all is this is so they can bring their sense objects to their senses. And even then, if they make 10 cores of the first year, even then, is it enough? No, they want to make 20 the next year and 40 the next year. And they want to increase and increase. And the whole time they're doing this, there's this fear, a fear that they will lose it. It'll be taken away. Because in deep inside, they know that this is temporary, because this is the nature of this material world. It's like in psychology, they have this therapy where it's called regression therapy. And they sometimes will take a patient back to where they remember their childhood where something traumatic happened to them. And that's why they're acting in an odd way as adults. And they're able to resolve this particular issue. So similarly, we have all left our eternal position in the spiritual sky. And so we have this deep intrinsic knowledge that everything is temporary that we're coming in contact with. So Srila Prabhupada explains all this, and he explains how these things just bring a great sense of loss when they're losing, because eventually we lose them. Eventually, everything is lost. Even if it's on a relationship which is so valued, the highest value in human life is relationships. And people work so hard to get them, and there's always the fear they're going to lose them. But even if they were fortunate enough to take it to old age, death will take them away from each other. It's so sad. It's so deeply, deeply sad. And most people prefer to stay in this illusion. They prefer not to be awoken from it. But the few that are considered buddhi, they're considered intelligent, because they open their eyes and they see, no, this is not real happiness. Those people are yogis, gyanis, and bhaktas. But the yogis and the gyanis, they are looking for mukti. They're looking for siddhi. As the Chaitanya Charitamrita says, that bhukti, mukti, siddhi, karma is that the bhukti is sense enjoyment, mukti is liberation, and siddhi is mystic perfection. So they're looking for these things, and these are material things as well. Even the yogis, they're so expert, they can shut down their body activities and slow their digestion way down. They can slow their breathing way down, and make no imprint on the ecological system of the earth. But still, there's karma. There's karma because of what breath they do take. Whatever their actions, just living, we create karma just by living. It made me think of Dhruva Maharaj, as how he was such a young boy. He was only 5 years old, and he came to this great frustration and anxiety with his father, who was denying him the kingdom, and his stepmother. And so he decided to go find God, whoever he could get a better kingdom from, and get a better kingdom. And luckily, along the way, he met his guru, Narada Muni. And Narada Muni gave him some very good instruction. He sent him to Madhuvan on the bank of the Jamuna. And he told him to look for the Lord in his heart and to meditate on the Lord in his heart. So he was so fortunate as he came and he found a bona fide spiritual master. So he was able to make great advancement. This is the secret, as Prabhupada said in the purport. And that as he first started out, the 5-year-old boy, he was only eating dried leaves every 3 days. And then he decided that he would give that up, and he was only taking water once every 3 days. Then he stood on one leg. Then the next month, he decided to take a breath only once every 3 days. And this is so amazing. But the power he had created from doing that disrupted even the demigods and the heavenly planets very far away. And they go running to Vishnu going, we don't know what's wrong, but we can hardly breathe. And Vishnu says, oh, don't worry, it's my devotee. I'll talk to him. So Vishnu comes to see Prahlad. And here's this little boy who was so intent on his meditation on the Lord of the heart. He was seeing Krishna in his heart, and he was so intent on this that Vishnu is standing outside of him, and Prahlad wouldn't even open his eyes. So Vishnu, he disappeared from his heart, and Prahlad was so astounded that he immediately opened his eyes and saw Vishnu there. And so it's just a young boy. He was fell down, immediately started off in obeisances, and because he didn't know how to properly receive the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he was grabbing his feet and trying to kiss them and hug them until Vishnu touched his head with a conch shell, and he became fully realized at that time. And then he composed and said beautiful, beautiful prayers to the Lord. And the main prayer that we all talk about is how he talks about, I was looking for broken pieces of glass, and I have found the greatest jewel. I don't want anything else but your service. That is all. So this is the Bhakta. This is the intelligent one. This is the one who works for the pleasure of Krishna. They're working not to get free of karma, not to get free of the material world. Actually, a devotee sees everything in relation to Krishna, and they use whatever they can in Krishna's service. It's quite astounding. If we were to have some type of special eyes, where we could watch a karmi go shopping and a devotee go shopping, and there was some kind of a calculator above their heads that we could see the calculation for the karma that's being developed, but while the materialist is shopping and while the devotee is shopping, there would be 0 for the devotee. So who knows the number for the materialist? Because the devotee, when they're shopping, they're thinking, what will please Krishna? And everything they do. So it appears like we're all doing the same thing. But the big difference is the motivation. And the devotee understands everything is Krishna's, and that he is Krishna's, and that he is Krishna's eternal servant. So this enjoyment comes because we are pleasure-seeking living entities. That we must have some pleasure. So that pleasure comes through the service to Krishna and his devotees. So Krishna does explain in the Bhagavad Gita, he explains that manmana bhava bhakto manjani mam namaskaru mam evashasi satyam te pagrite jane priyoshime. Always think of me. Become my devotee, worship me, and offer your homage to me. Thus you will surely come to me without fail. I promise you this because you are my very dear friend. So this is this direct instruction from Krishna himself. It's more important than any Vedic instruction, or ritualistic activity, or sacrifice, or regulative duties, or meditative techniques. This is very powerful stuff. So the Bhagavad Gita is directed towards this conclusion, and that to understand all this, one just has to associate with the authorities in Krishna consciousness and learn the secret from them. So, and we are so fortunate that Srila Prabhupada has left us all these books with complete understanding, complete, clear, crystal clear understanding of all these truths. It's as good as learning from the Supreme Lord himself. So we are very blessed. Yasya prasada bhagavat prasado, yasya prasada nagatitatopi. So we won't be bewildered. We won't be confused. But we do have to be conscious of what our motivations are and what we're doing. Srila Prabhupada says, first become conscious and then become Krishna conscious. So we need to be conscious of why we're doing what we're doing and not fall into a rut of trying to make a nice arrangement for our senses. You know, the movement has really become a very beautiful thing. And it's not as austere as it used to be. And that's really good for a lot of reasons. But we can't let it become our place to relax and become complacent. Because spiritual life, it is not a stagnant thing. Spiritual life is an active thing, and it needs to be fed, and it needs to be developed, and it needs to be encouraged in order to grow. If we ignore it, it won't just stay still, it'll recede. And we don't want to lose anything that we've worked so hard for. So we just have to build the proper mentality. And there was something that was so sweet that His Holiness Sachinandana Swami had written on Dandavats. And I thought it was kind of apropos, because a lot of times we work so hard in that Krishna consciousness, we might get a little discouraged. We're wondering, well, does Krishna even know I'm here? And he wrote this, which is very sweet. And it's based on the Brihad Bhagavatamrita, which is also an extremely, extremely sweet book. And it starts off, the Lord said, a long time passed, and there was not a single sign that you would ever look in my direction. And His Holiness Sachinandana Swami says, Krishna is very eager for the company of each and every one of us. As I sit here in Vrindavan, I sometimes ask myself, does Krishna see my efforts? Does he care for such an insignificant and useless person? I've seen many sincere practitioners of bhakti ask this question. The answer is yes. Krishna is very eager for the company of each and every one of us. The Brihad Bhagavatamrita describes this in the instance when Lord Narayan welcomes Gopakumar after a long journey to the Lord's divine abode. Narayan says, I looked down the path, observing whether or not you were coming. A long time passed, and I saw you didn't even show interest in chanting the holy names. There was not a single sign that you would ever look in my direction and wanted to come to me. So finally, I did something. I couldn't break my timeless laws of not interfering with the spiritual progress and desires of anyone, but I sent a great soul. I actually became your spiritual master. And then you took the mantra and you started your journey. Now I'm very happy. You have come. You have come. Please stay here with me. We know that Gopakumar stayed for some time, but the yearning of his heart was not fully satisfied in Vaikuntha, Lord Narayan's abode. He wanted to go to Vraj, where playful Krishna engages in sublime relationships of love with his many devotees. After visiting other places, at some point, he reaches Vrindavan. The book describes his first meeting with Krishna. In the distance, he sees Krishna coming with the cows. He hears the happy laughter and flutes of Krishna's many friends. Krishna is surrounded by a cloud of dust raised by the cow hooves. And some powerful demigods dive down to catch the dust that has touched Krishna's lotus feet. Suddenly, Krishna becomes aware of Gopakumar, approaching from the distance. As soon as he sees him, Krishna breaks free from the cows and the cowherd boys and runs towards Gopakumar. Finally, he can embrace Gopakumar and overcome with feelings of excitement and love. He falls to the ground and muddies it with his tears of ecstasy caused by the arrival of his dear friend. The expression of overwhelmed joy is a sign of Krishna's character. It shows that he cares very much for everyone and is most happy about the tiniest sign of spiritual life in someone. And when a soul becomes mature and ready for meeting Krishna, it's full of joy. It is described that the first meeting with Krishna or experiences of him are very brief, feeling like a dream. This was better than anything I've ever seen or experienced so far. Then the meeting and the experiences become longer and words and embraces are exchanged. And then the soul finally enters into the eternal pastimes. So yes, Krishna does care. Hare Krishna. So we'll conclude the class here. And if anybody has any additions or contradictions or questions, please ask.
So if anyone has any questions, you can unmute and ask the question. Comments or realization. Yes, Guru Prabhu.
Hare Krishna Mataji.
Hare Krishna.
Please accept my humble obeisances. You had a very good class. I want to know this Dhruv Maharaj. He was doing tapa for some sakam karma. He wanted to have big kingdom. So how he could succeed in this to meet the Godhead?
Well,
through sakam karma.
So he wanted to have the kingdom, right? And
Yeah.
the first person he told was his mother. And his mother said, well, I've heard that everything comes from the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And that yogis find him in the forest. So that was his main motivation in the beginning. And, you know, it says in the Bhagavad Gita, we all come to spiritual life with actually, there's 4 different motivations we come with, right? We come with the desire for something financial. Yeah, or we come with a desire for some knowledge, or we come with a desire for looking for the absolute. And we come with, what's the 4th one? Some desire, money, I forget.
Distress. One is distress. One is money.
Distress.
One is
yes, thank you. Yes, we come because we're distressed. And the thing of it is, in our development of Krishna consciousness, this comes a time when we have to give up these lower desires and take higher consciousness. And sometimes those times are very difficult for the devotees. They're really, really challenging. But we need to make that leap, that faith, that step forward. And Dhruva Maharaj, he easily made that step forward when he saw Vishnu standing in front of him.
Yes. Okay, Mother. Thanks.
Thank you for your question.
Any other points anyone wants to raise? Questions?
Well, we'll conclude here. Thank you all for coming. And thank you for allowing me to speak.
Thank you very much.
Hope we're all.
Krishna.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.
Hare
Jai Shri
Krishna.
Prabhupada.
Jai Shri Prabhupada.